Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to Not For Anything podcast. We are your hosts, Jess and Ju, and today we have someone very funny, very cool, very special joining us today. Her name is Juliana Rodrigues, and she is right here. She is a comedian in Toronto. She does really cool stuff. I'm just going to brag about her for 2 minutes and list off everything that she's done.
Now I'm going to go back away. Now I'm stressed.
It's amazing. The most anxious person you'll ever meet in your entire life. But she actually started her stand-up career when she was in high school. She's gone on to open for Mr. D at the Sony Centre. She tours with Yuk Yuk's. She just did a Just for Laughs taping that you can find on Crave. She did a recording on CBC for Laugh Out Loud Radio. And she actually has her own podcast as well called All Good, where she talks about mental health with other comedians that she knows. So she's killing the game, guys. We are so lucky to have her on, and we hope she comes back.
Oh, there she is. Okay, good. She came back. She's back.
Okay, cool. I know she can't handle being complimented for 2 seconds, but...
Yeah, usually after people give me a compliment, they like don't see me for an hour. I'm very embarrassed. I'm surprised I stayed and I just didn't, just leave.
Wait, I'm trying to remember. There was one episode on your podcast where you said someone gave you a compliment and you literally went to the green room for an hour and just didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God.
It is awkward when people give you compliments though, because I find I don't know what to do with my body, and I become very aware of my facial expressions. Because I don't want to come off seeming like, oh yes, compliment me, but I also don't want to come off rude. So I just go, I end up doing this weird thing with my mouth. So I don't don't feel alone in that. I feel like it's so awkward to accept a compliment in general.
You can't win. If you own the compliment, then you're conceited, and then if you don't, you're just being annoying. It's take the fucking compliment, and you're like, oh my God, I'm so anxious. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. I was actually just talking about this recently with my therapist, because I have to work on this for myself. And she was like, when you're taking a compliment, sometimes by trying to deflect, it seems like you're fishing for more compliments. So if you actually want to get out of it as fast as possible, you have to just say thank you, and then just go to the bathroom and cry about it or something.
Yeah, have a full mental breakdown.
Your therapist earned her pay that day, or their pay. Sorry, but they definitely earned their pay that day.
Yeah.
Is it a guy? I feel like was it a guy?
It's a girl. Her name is Rebecca. Yeah.
You had a guy at one point though.
I had
wouldn't answer.
I had an older therapist. His name was Paul. He had a flip phone. And our last session together, he was just like, oh, sorry, my flip phone is about to die. He's like, and he cut the therapy session 20 minutes short, and he blamed it on his dead flip phone. I was like, first of all, those are two separate issues. The fact that you have a flip phone is a different issue. The fact that it's dying is another one.
Well, considering they don't die for weeks on end, it's sir. But Juliana, since we've spoken so much about you, why don't you, and I know this might not be a thing, but do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, tell us a bit about yourself, man.
Wow. I'm pretty much my entire identity is wrapped up in doing comedy. So all of the credits that you listed is just the extent of my life. I'm trying to date,
Is Paul available? Where's he at these days?
Yeah. That's I don't even know what to say. I'm just trying to survive.
I just wanted to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about what your comedy is like what you feel your sort of brand is, and maybe talk about what the podcast has done for you as well with talking to other comics?
I think my style of comedy is I've been told that I am pretty, I guess, sarcastic, kind of deadpan. There's no act outs in my act. You will never see me do an act out. It's just words and a mic. I just talk about things that are important to my life. Some jokes are political, some jokes aren't. I just like to talk from a place of just real life experience. I've never made up a story or anything like that. So everything that you hear is very true to my real life. And that's pretty much all I can say. Yeah.
And you're pretty clean. You're a pretty clean comic as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that, yeah, you can be. I kind of want to do not like dirty material, but I'd like to go a little bit darker. But I think the CBC owns like 3 out of our 4 comedy festivals. So I'm like, I'll just stay on the clean side for the sake of working for now. And then if I ever put out an album, then I'll put those out.
Nice.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty.
Well, that's probably where we should start. Like, can you speak for comedians right now? Like, what is the situation with you guys? Because Julie and I are theater people, so we know how the industry's sort of affected us. We can imagine what it might be like for you guys, but what has it been like as a comedian yourself?
Well, there's just like no shows. Like, there's literally no shows happening. There are some shows that happen at comedy clubs, like when lockdown gets lifted at the end of March, but who knows what's going to happen. And we've just been doing a lot of outdoor shows like over the summer and then into the fall. And then once winter hit, I'm sure people would have kept doing outdoor shows if we didn't go into another lockdown, but it's literally all outdoors.
And have people tried to do like Zoom stuff? Like, it doesn't work with like stand up?
Yeah, they've definitely tried to do Zoom shows. I have done 2, and they are so bad. You just like because everybody has their mics off, so you don't even know if your jokes are working, if they're not working. You just have to like look at a chat box, and then people will just write like LOL, and you have to like just figure out what joke that aligns with at that time. It's really sad. It's bad.
Oh, that's the worst. That is the worst.
Because we've been complaining that like, theater online sucks. There's no audience interaction. But it wasn't until I think I was throwing together a fundraiser cabaret and I wanted a stand-up comedian, and I was like, well, how are they gonna do a bit when they can't interact? Like, how is that gonna work? So I can't imagine how, as a comedian yourself, and like you said, like it's your identifier, it's your whole human being, that like, how does one continue to do the one thing that they were like born to do, love to do, passionate about doing, when you can't?
Yeah. I think that pretty much goes for everybody. Like, how do you do theater over webcam? Like, that's way more intriguing, because like stand up, I feel like, is pretty plain and simple. You just set up your camera, do whatever. But how do you put a whole production behind a video camera? Is that
you do it, but the quality is just not there. Like, seeing lighting in a theater versus seeing lighting over Zoom is like not the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, feeling like the tension during a really dramatic moment in the crowd like is not a thing. It's no.
It becomes like a grade 12 film assignment, I think, is the best way to describe it, because you have people learning, theater people trying to do film stuff, so it's like they're learning how to do it for the first time about how things read on camera. So it's very like, this is my grade 12 filming assignment, it's my grade 12 CPT. Here you go. I feel like that's mostly the vibe that it gives off, but again, it's presentational, whereas comedy is so immersive and interactive that
I would say that's the difference, is that like comedy is like the interaction is lost, and then theater, the presentation is just like, it's shitty. It's really shitty presentation over camera. Like, it's just not the same. But what?
How did you? So I have a question. Here's my question. How did you get started in comedy? Like, were you once a theater person and then was like, no, I think stand up works better for me, or were you just always like intrigued to stand up in general?
So before I started doing comedy, and it's kind of funny because like I feel like for a lot of comedians, when they're like younger, they have some sort of not obsession, but like they want to be on TV, or like entertain their family, or like they put on little plays for their family, or something like that. When I was younger, I used to play soccer when I was like very young. And the only reason why I wanted to get good at it was because I just wanted to be on TV. I was like, if you just get so good, then eventually you get to play on TV. And that's all I care about. And then I ended up like quitting soccer. And then I joined, I wanted to be like a comedic actor. And then I'm a terrible actor. It didn't work out. I didn't take it seriously. I thought like anything that was too dramatic was just kind of like lame. Like I was a little bit cynical about it, even though I was like 13 or 12. And then I took a Second City course for improv. And that was a lot of fun. I was like, okay, I like that it's just comedy focused, whereas, you know, acting is, you know, just a bunch of different genres. I just prefer comedy. And then I was like 14 years old and I was like, these people are idiots. They're not funny. I'm superior and I should just go do my own thing. and then I just started doing stand-up. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
so
amazing.
funny.
Yeah.
And you've stuck with it ever since. Like, that's what I think is so great, is that you've just been like grinding since you started. You're like, I'm just going to do this thing and like, let's see what happens. And then here you are years later, you've achieved so much, even though I know you would like never admit that to yourself, but you've done a lot.
I guess, but I think it's, you know, it's all like relative. Like I didn't just decide, like, it's like there were things that were happening that I was just like, okay, so this is like proof that like I could continue on this path. And like, thankfully there were people who like believed in me and told me that I should keep doing it. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened if I had to go to high school. Like if I was, you know, about to start college and people were like, hey, it's great that you're trying this out and everything, but like you should quit for sure. Like, don't do this. I probably would have listened a little bit. Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's not even people telling you that directly. Sometimes it's you go on stage and you just have a bad night and nobody's laughing. And that's enough to make a person go, fuck this. I'm never doing this again. The embarrassment was too much. But like, you need those nights. You know?
Do you remember the first time you bombed?
Yeah. 100. I mean, it happened all the time. It still happens. You're never not gonna bomb. Like,
yeah.
Pros, everybody, it happens to literally everybody. But yeah, when you're first starting out, it's a lot of that. There was one time I'll never forget. I was like 16 and I brought my mom to this like open mic downtown, and it was like a half stand-up, half like musical open mic. So like you had a lot of people singing, and like a lot of people that were in the audience were just performers waiting to go up, and I didn't know that, like, because it was only, I'd only been doing it for a year. I didn't know. And there was just like poets and like musicians that just had like long wizard beards that just didn't give a fuck about anything other than like waiting for their flute time, you know, like they were like just waiting for it. And the list was very long, and I didn't realize what an open mic entailed that much. And I got there and I went up. I was like 23rd on this list, and I went up. I was sitting there with my mom from like 8 p.m. to like 12, like midnight. And I was like the last person to go up. There was like a few people still in the room, and I just ate it so bad. Nobody laughed. People were not even looking at me, like they didn't care. And I left crying. Like I was so upset. I left with literal tears in my eyes. And there was like this musician guy who like was being nice to me, but also trying to hit on my mom. So like he followed me out and was like, hey kiddo, like it's okay, like don't worry about it, you know, it happens all the time. And he just like explained to me comedy, and he was like, look, I know I'm not a comedian, but like this isn't it, like this is just an open mic, don't worry about it. And I was like, my world had come down on me, and I was like, what the fuck? And then you just like chase that, you know, high of actually doing well the next time, and then that just makes you go do it again. You're like, wait, I had it last time, but I don't have it this time, like what's the difference? And then you just try to keep finding it.
I think Jim Carrey has a similar kind of story. I think because you said you were 16 when this happened, and you had just started the year before, so you were 15 when you started. And I think he mentions too, like he started young-ish in his teens, and he like the first 3 years he bombed every single time. But now he's whatever, like now. So knowing that, especially like when you're at that age, when it's so like effective on like your mental health and like your self-worth, just like knowing that could have been a different situation is amazing. That you persisted and continued to, you know, go with it and do it, especially so young. I didn't know you were that young when you started, so like you're
so fragile at that age. But yeah, I think it's great what you said, that like if you hadn't had the encouragement, you don't know like where you would have gone. And so like grinding it out isn't always like as like glamorous as I guess it sounds, like just to say like, oh, I just kept doing it, man, like never give up. Like no, like sometimes when you get little green flags along the way, like it helps like for you to keep going.
It helps. And like we've all met people who like we think should quit, and they're just like, nah man, I'm in it, I'm grinding it out. You're like, you're an insane person, this is psychotic.
Well, it's an ego thing too, right? Like like we might have to pause because I don't know if I can say this. And if I can't say this, and we'll just keep this in, and that's great. But we knew a person who,
she knows him.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're talking about,
Oh, okay, great. So this person thinks that they are like God's gift to comedy, when in actuality they're a fraud and not funny at all, amongst other words I can use to describe this person. But, you know, it's that kind of ego where it's like you can't take the feedback and being like, this isn't working for you. Maybe not like this as like comedy as a whole, but like this specific thing that you're doing in your act isn't working for you. Try this next time, or be a bit more this next time. And it's just like total shutdown. Like, nope, this is me and this is my thing and this is what I do. I think that gets in the way, like you said. And those are people that are like, you just need to quit now.
Yeah. Well, and there's a difference between like, with that example, like, just because you think
so careful with our words.
I don't give a fuck. Just because you think you're funny doesn't mean you are funny. Like, other people have to be laughing with you for it to be funny.
Yeah,
for sure. There's definitely a difference between, and it's the unfortunate thing about stand-up comedy is that a lot of people think it's very accessible because I think everybody thinks that they're funny to like a degree, and it's just like, I should try it because this is something that I'm interested in. And I think that's great. I think everybody can obviously try it. There's nothing that's preventing you from going and holding a microphone on a stage and saying words. You don't need a degree. But like, I think it's different. I just wish comedy was as well respected as like becoming an actor or like a singer. Cause like, if I said I wanted to become a singer, I would be delusional because like I obviously can't sing. But if somebody's just like, oh, I think I can try comedy, you know that like there's potential that they could be good at it, but they're not going to find out until 2 or 3 years later. So
sure.
People think that stand-up is this like really accessible art form. Unfortunately, it draws a lot of people that are in it for like the ego, and they're just like, I just want to go say words and like be confident on stage and people to think I'm amazing. But it's like, they quickly find out that that's not the case. And
Well, and one thing I learned from like being friends with you is that you guys, like, just as an industry, as like a sort of like a peer group, a community, y'all never stop working. Like, all of you are writing all the time, or working on the next thing, or editing, or doing something. Like, I know you specifically are like really obsessed with it and like sort of like make it like your only focus, but it really is an art form, and there is work that goes into it. It's not, I thought of a funny joke, now I'm going to repeat it. You know, there's a craft to it.
Yeah, I was just about to say it. It is a craft, because it's same way acting is, same way other art forms are, is that there needs to be discipline, there needs to be structure, there needs to be feedback, and there needs to be a process. Like, you know what I mean? It's not as simple as like Jess was saying, just like, people laugh when I talk, therefore I'm funny, is not necessarily the sentence that makes the most sense. But I think you said something really delicious in that, like, it's not respected enough as an industry, as a craft, because there's like this thought process around it that's just, well, I can go on stage and tell a joke, anyone can do that. There's the same kind of mentality with, and this is so fucking random, with audio, and like, I learned this when I was working at concerts, but the sound engineers were like, no one gives a shit when you do your job and the audio sounds really good, but everybody knows if the audio sounds like shit. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like, oh, well, everybody, like, if you're funny, yeah, you can be funny and that's you doing your job, but if you bomb, everybody knows it. So there's like a lack of respect there, because there's no understanding of the discipline that goes into it, right? So,
and there's no forgiveness, I think, is what you're saying. It's comedy is very unforgiving. It's either there's do or do not. There is no try. You know? Whether you do it and you're funny, or you don't and you need to leave. Like,
yeah, for sure. Totally. I just wish that it was also respected in the way that's like people going to like the opera and like going to see the Nutcracker. It's like nobody's showing up there wasted, but people show up to comedy clubs sloshed out of their minds. There's like shows where people interrupt you, and like I have personally I have been to shows where the person, there's somebody in the front row with literally their shoes off, with their feet on the stage.
That's disgusting. I'm gonna throw it.
Vaughn Yuk Yuks. Vaughn is a very confusing
part of place.
GTA, but yeah. I was like, do you think you're at your Nona's house or something, you asshole? Get your feet off the stage.
Well, that's so funny, because if you think about like going to a comedy show in like the 60s, it was one of those events where you got dressed up and you sat at a table and you had dinner and you had drinks, but it like and I mean, this is just how like casual culture has become anyways now, but like it used to be something that was very classy. Same thing with roasts, right? Like roasts as events used to be so classy, and now they're like, you know,
right,
how they are.
I think as a society, we've all just gotten way more casual about everything, because even in theaters now, like my family, we've always dressed up to go to shows. Through high school, it was really reinforced with our teachers and stuff to like dress up, look nice for the show. And I've carried that through every performance art. Like I've went to Yuk Yuk's on my birthday. I went to Second City. Like I remember always just looking nice. And you see people like literally wearing a flannel and dirty jeans, and they're like, they couldn't give less of a fuck that they're in like a theater where people are like, you've paid to come see this, like make some effort, what's wrong with you?
Like when I go to the theater, or really anywhere, like if I'm going out and that's not like the grocery store, and I see people in like flip-flops. Like I went to the theater once and I saw a girl in shorts and flip-flops, and I was like, listen, Karen, I know it's a matinee and I know you've woken up early to come here, but like fucking throw on a pair of tights and like leggings at least. You know what I mean? Like it's just, and it's because like you said, Juliana, there's no respect or regard for the actual craftsmanship that's going into going to a comedy show, going to a live theater, going, you know, out. It's just going out, right? Because there's no regard or respect for that. So it's a very interesting point that you brought that up, because no one, I don't think, says that out loud.
And it could be that, and I don't know, I was actually just talking to our friend Catalin the other day about this. I was just like, I don't know why comedy is it's not seen as like this, and we were talking about it being why people think it's so accessible. And sometimes, especially with comedy, there was one time, Jess, you know this guy, I'll say his name after the podcast, but we went to high school, or maybe not, because you were a year younger, but you know who this guy is. Anyway, there's this guy that went to our high school, and I saw him at a Yuk Yuk's. I had like just gotten off stage and he was in the audience, and I thought he was gonna be like, hey, like, oh my god, it's nice to see you, like, how is everything, just catching up. But he was like, hey, like, I want to try comedy. And he said word for word the sentence. He was like, I feel like I have the confidence to tear that stage apart. And I was like, I don't understand how you think that that's all it takes. Like, it's what? Like, it's just so
like what
to me.
Also, most comedians are very insecure people. What is confidence? Enter the equation. It's not confidence. It's holy fuck, I'm gonna dive in head first and not think about it. Like, it's manic is what it is.
Yeah. Since when is confidence funny?
Like,
confidence is annoying.
That's so funny. It's like, there is not one comedian that you saw tonight that remotely has any sort of confidence whatsoever. At all.
I wanted to ask you, just to kind of like ask like really specific things and dig a little deeper, but you travel a lot. So can you speak to like, what's the Toronto scene like? Like, what's Toronto like for comedy?
Toronto's great. I think it's the best city in Canada to get better at doing comedy. And I think it's because you have a lot of pros. Like, our scene is the biggest one in Canada. It's between like Toronto and Vancouver, but the one in Toronto is much bigger, I think. And because of that, you can be new at doing comedy and still be on a lineup with pros that have been doing it for a really long time. And it's like a better learning experience because of that. Cool. Like, you get to, just getting to perform with people that are so much better than you is such a huge, and just getting to watch them, you know. Is great. And you get to see them from like, they come from all over Canada to Toronto.
I like hearing that. Like, I like hearing that we have a good scene, because there's as we know, we found out in the last like 5 or 6 years, there's also a lot of creeps roaming around, and you know, things can be kind of scary. So it's nice to know that we have a pretty solid place to, you know, explore, have like young comedians feel safe. You know, that's important.
Sure. I mean, we still don't have an entertainment industry in Canada. So when I say it's the best one in Canada, that's the bar is very low. Like the bar is in hell. It's so low. But you know, just comparatively speaking, I think it's still the best city to get better in.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Jess, based off of like what you said, like you were right in saying that like we've discovered in the last little while that there's a lot of creeps in the comedy scene. And as a woman doing comedy, how has it been navigating your career with disgusting pardon?
I was going to say as a young female, especially
as a young female. Yeah, it's just navigating a career as a woman in general is difficult, but in sorry, I paid $40,000 to speak incorrectly. But in an industry that's so male dominated, how have you navigated that?
And also like channeling your broness too, because you've had to sort of what we call like play the game with a lot of male, anyway, you know, go ahead.
Yeah. I think that, you know, unfortunately there's still, I'm just trying to like break this question up because there's different kind of areas to this. So right now a lot of some male comedians have a tendency to complain saying that they're being overlooked because of the they think that like industry spots are not so focused on like white male comics anymore. And I think representation is really important. Obviously, Canada is so diverse and Toronto is so diverse. And a lot of white male comics are kind of in a position where they're complaining for like the first time in their career about like not being able to get a spot because somebody was looking for like BIPOC or like a woman or whatever, you know? And it's like, I mean, I understand that there is something, I agree to like an extent that is not necessarily true, but in that maybe you are getting overlooked and now you have to be undeniable like women and people of color have had to be for so long in order to get those same opportunities. But I still can't do a show with like more than 3 women on it without it being a themed show. So it's like, I know that right now you're kind of in a frustrated position, but it's still not good enough where like I'm usually the only woman on a show or like one of 2 women. Because if there's more than 3, then it's like ladies' night, you know, or whatever.
Interesting.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah.
It's not seen as just a comedy show yet, you know, and until we get to that point, I think we haven't seen like real progress. In terms of like creepy men, thankfully, I haven't run into anything too scary. I have been fortunate enough to not have those experiences. And I think it's probably because when I started, I was like very, very young, where like it would be legit. Like if anybody tried to do anything, like they could go to jail for sure. Like no questions asked. And then by the time I got older, I think maybe I knew people and they just kind of still saw me as like this little, I'm not sure. But for some reason, thankfully, I haven't had those experiences, but it is a very real thing for a lot of women. And then I was going to say that, oh God, I think I lost my train of thought. But anyway, even though it feels like there's progress being made, there's still kind of like, isn't.
A long way to go. Yeah.
There's still a long way to go. I think there's a lot of gatekeepers that are women, which is great. Whereas like before, these gatekeepers were just like men and it was very much like a boys club. Like they were just picking comedians that like they saw themselves in or just like wanted to be friends with or something. I don't know. But now thankfully a lot of that is it's changing. Yeah.
Very nice. Well said.
Yeah.
You spoke so eloquently.
Yeah, sorry. I hope I didn't just like go around in a bunch of circles. Sometimes like I just get, I think I
like tick, tick, tick. You got all of them.
We fully asked you like an essay question and expected you to like tell us a dissertation in like 2 sentences, but no, it was great. Like you, like said,
please explain your thinking.
Yeah, please. you said all the points, right? Like I especially really like the point of, you know, if there's more than 3 chicks in the lineup, then it's ladies' night. Like,
yeah. I was like, of course it would be. Of course it would turn into that.
Yeah. And that's another thing, like Jess is saying, like when you gotta fucking play the game, it's just like, well, it's a gig, but also I don't agree with this, but also there are a lot of women in this lineup, but also the whole mindset altogether is like wrong. So
I remember you telling. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
That was my. Sorry, I just made out with my microphone, but my thought was finished.
I love it. I remember you telling me a story where a comedian whose career recently kind of like went to hell in a handbasket a couple of years back. He came to Toronto, and everyone was very excited that he was back, and he was, it was great. But there was someone you were talking to who like made a comment to you where it was like, isn't it so great he's back in the game? Like people were so oversensitive or like so dramatic about that incident that happened with him, blah, 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 blah. And you just kind of had to be like, yeah, it's great that because like, what are you going to say? Like, no, I hate him. Like, you don't want to burn any bridges. Like it's that kind of playing the game stuff where you're like, it's great. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's but also that tells you so much about the person that you're talking to. Like the person I was talking to wasn't another comedian, it was somebody who I worked for. So that just goes to show you, I was just like, man, and then after that conversation I was like, do I really want to be working for somebody who so freely would say something like that to me? And
to you specifically, like how tone deaf.
But just knowing that like being in the position that I'm in, I think that if you're like a manager at a store, you don't ask your employee what they think of like something taboo or something controversial, like, you know what I mean? It's like that.
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of answer do you think that they're going to give you? Like, I'm relying on you for money. So yeah. Like, and then after that I was like, yeah, I don't want to work for this person anymore, because that's just kind of like a weird abuse of power type of situation.
Yeah. 100%.
But that's again another interesting point is like, so, and this has been such a big topic in comedy for the last few years of just like, well, were people being too sensitive, or is it actually funny? Like
that was the next point. Yeah, we'll do that one to wrap it up. But the where's the line question.
Yeah, this is a meme because I often can't speak English and then have multiple strokes, and I think many episodes ago I said what's the line instead of where's the line, and then I said, how is it, Jess? You know it off by heart. What did I say?
What's the line? Where is it heard?
And believe
there's no line for
there's no line for it.
I have no idea what you were referencing at ping pong.
I don't either. But in comedy, what is the line? Like, because recently, and I've heard so many comics complain, Mark Maron talks about it a lot in his podcast of just like, are you tiptoeing around a subject? Do you just fucking hit him in the face with it and hope they laugh? Like, because there used to be a point in time where stuff that Louis C.K. said was funny, and then you found out what he was actually about, and then he's not so fucking funny anymore because you understand the context of what it is. So, and even though that's not really a point that had to do with my sentence before, I'm just kind of saying that, I guess. But what is the line? Where do you find that people are being sometimes too sensitive? Or
what's your philosophy on it? Because every community is different.
Yeah.
I think you said a really good word, which is context. And I think context means everything. I think that some of the best, I think you have to be a really skillful writer in order to talk about something so controversial, and to find that line. I think that the audience, I think you need to, first of all, understand, you need to be kind of in the know with like what's happening, what the political climate is, who your audience is. Like there's so many different variables. Sometimes you can cross a line with the same joke playing at a college and not cross that line playing for like a small town in like Aurelia or something. Like it's not.
Aurelia is very open-minded. Yeah.
Yeah. And it really, it depends on so many different things. But I think the most important thing is just if it's coming from a good place, if you're trying to push society forward and you're using art as a way to progress society, which is what I think some of the best comedians do, like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock. Like their stuff is just so intelligent, but again, it's trying to like move society forward, you know, find you know, irony, kind of put like a mirror to society. And I think as long as you have that in mind when you're writing your joke or you're just like approaching a topic, then I think it'll come across and people won't be mad at you. You know, some people get offended if you say a word, but I don't think that reflects. I never think it's the audience's fault. I'm just one of those people because the audience is the only thing that matters. So it's like if they're saying that something was offensive, even though you don't think it's offensive, you just have to like look at how it was structured. It's just the audience is society. The audience is just society. Just like how music changes as time goes on, comedy evolves with the times as well. So if you're one of those people that's just like, screw this crowd, they get offended by everything, I don't want to play to them, then that's fine. But you have to also understand that you're choosing to not progress with the time and like find a way around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a toddler throwing a tantrum, just being like, well, they're all wrong and I'm right because I don't think it's offensive. And you're actually sort of like the closed-minded one in that moment, which is funny because I think the one thing a lot of comedians would hope for is that society would be more open-minded. Because, you know, when audiences get offended, there are some jokes where I'm just like, oh my God, can we not just look at that joke, see what that comedian was trying to say, understand why it's funny, and like just take it easy. You know what I mean? Like I'm all for critical thinking, but sometimes I wish people could just. I wish audiences were smarter sometimes, because I feel like sometimes they get offended because they just don't get it. Like they actually just don't get the joke, and that's when it becomes this like really wishy-washy area where the comedian's like, I don't know how to explain to you that you're not getting the joke, so that's why you're probably offended right now. But also, if that's where you're at in your thinking, I should try to meet you there as well, which is what you were saying. So
it's like you were saying, all about context too. Like Ricky Gervais was talking in his Humanity special on Netflix about when he was hosting the Golden Globes. Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong. How he dead named
like, I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
but he dead named Caitlyn Jenner, and then people on Twitter, you know Ricky Gervais on fucking Twitter, but he's a fucking advocate for free speech. But it's not only that, but on Twitter people were calling him transphobic. So he was trying to understand, like he was meeting them halfway and like trying to understand what he did wrong, and said like, oh, I would never do it intentionally like that, but this is what I actually meant. And it needs to be that kind of like ping pong game where it's like, throw me the joke, I will throw it back at you if I don't like it. And then actually no, it's nothing like a ping pong game. It's actually nothing like a game of ping pong.
It's a tennis match of listening to each other. Like I get what you're saying. Ping pong, tennis, all the sports.
As I was talking, I was like, this does not make sense.
It's okay. We've all been there. We've all been there.
But I was going to say, to that point, those people that were getting at Ricky Gervais, they were messaging him. They were Gervais. They were messaging him on Twitter, which is something that hasn't been part of like our, like comedians have never had that as a feedback, as a register for feedback. It's always been, does this audience laugh? Do they not laugh? And that's our barometer. But now, because you have Twitter, and because the Golden Globes is this nationally broadcasted thing, you have people on Twitter that are going to like voice their opinions on it. Whereas like it shouldn't, not to say that it like shouldn't matter totally, but I think that if you're a performer, you need to just be focused on whether this joke gets laughs or not. And then if they get laughs, then that means the people in the room understood it. And that's the most important thing.
And also, I guess, like, what it's worth is the joke. If you know it's a really high risk joke, is it worth it to have like national upset when you can maybe just say the joke to a smaller crowd and then see what happens there, you know? As opposed to like, let's try to upset more people on a really big scale and see what happens.
Totally. I think that there's a fine balance for sure. And I think if you're going to kind of go there, then you have to just like not care about whatever you're going to hear after. And I think as long as you're saying something that you believe in, that's really all that matters at the end of the day.
Be your fucking self.
Be your fucking self.
Yeah. Be your fucking self.
I think we can close with one more thing, and then we'll probably be done. Poor thing. But it's been going well. You like it?
Yeah, it's going well. I do like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm thinking about there's so many stories with this fucking bitch of her just like throwing up everywhere she went.
I'm never not throwing up. Like, that's my default setting, is throwing up.
My fucking stupid brain was about to be like, does a body good? Which does not do a body good. Does not do a body. Does a body good. Throwing up does a body good. But that's just my bulimia being like, lol.
We have to put a trigger warning in now, Julia.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was about.
No, it's okay. I'm going to cut it out. It's okay. I bombed it. I'm going to cut it out. It's okay.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Juliana, thank you so much for coming on. Like, we're so lucky to have you. Thank you for coming on, for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom and opinions. We really appreciate it. And
thank you guys so much for having me. This has been the highlight of my week and perhaps my month. So I really, really needed this. Thank you. Hopefully I don't text you at 5 a.m. tonight, Jess. I don't know. I love the panic text. Hey, are you awake? I can't breathe. Oh, it's my favorite.
I love it. Well, thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you in another 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.
Go check out Juliana's podcast.
Oh, yeah, go look at Juliana's podcast. Go look at Juliana's podcast. We'll put the link in the description.
Yay.
And it's great. Yay.
Bye, guys.
Bye. What ending was that?